the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for our recap of day one of the second test of the 2023 Ashes. It wasn't a good one for England until right at the end when they recovered just a little bit of a glimmer of hope thanks to Joe Root. I'm Jack Hope, I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. How are you doing, Max Rowe Brown?
Hello. I'm better than I was about an hour ago, but I'm still not particularly happy.
Why are you not happy?
I was really excited for today's cricket, and then I saw England won the toss, and I was like, well, we've basically won the game, and well, we haven't.
Yeah. It didn't quite turn out that way. It was a little bit of a depressing one if you were an England fan. A really, really good one if you support Australia. One of the best ones, I think, if you support Australia. And we're going to be talking about all of that, and I think that is all of that. That is all of that for this show. Max, what is a serious cricket, and why is it on people's screens if they're on YouTube, and why should they go to the show notes and click the link if they're not?
Well, Serious Cricket is a fantastic supplier of all your cricketing goods, and they have been very kind enough to support us and sponsor this show. And as a reward for you, dear listener, you can go over to seriouscricket.co.uk, and if you use the code TCP23, as it says just below me on the screen, or in the show notes, you can get 10% off your cricket equipment. Maybe a mid-season refresh of your gear is in order. Maybe you've had a bad start to the year and you want to find some lucky inners that will see you through to the end of the season. Head over there, pop in the code, get going.
Get going indeed. Max, we're also going to talk about the cricket. The cricket seriously.
Yeah.
That didn't make any in my head. That was going to work. It didn't work. Can you talk people through what happened in the cricket?
Absolutely. So obviously, question number one, who was going to win the toss? Everyone's seen the pictures of the pitch beforehand, lots of grass. Everyone's seen the forecast, clouds overhead. So big toss to win. And that first victory went to Ben Stokes, and he obviously put Australia into bat. We were all expecting a flurry of wickets, a classic Lord's swinging day, ball hooping around. And there was movement, but that movement seemed to just go past David Warner's edge about 50 times on his way to an opening 66, which really set a platform for Australia. Steve Smith came in and was Steve Smith. Marnus Labuschagne came in and was more like the old Marnus Labuschagne, and Australia just kept getting further and further away from England. It was a pretty depressing day to be an England fan, or indeed an England bowler or fielder. But Joe Root, England's frontline spinner, after they went with the four-seam approach, was the man who dragged England back into it to give them a bit of hope. So even the wickets that happened at the end of the day, Jack, perhaps not even good news. The ball started turning and we don't have an actual spinner. We've got Joe Root. So you can even, as an England fan, you can find all the negatives in the positives today. That was the kind of cricket we were looking at. So that was good fun. But I think, obviously a massive win for Australia, but those two late wickets do at least make it worth getting up tomorrow.
I suppose they do. I think there's been a few hot takes floating around. There's a lot to cover in this match. I think we should set out what we need to cover. First, we need to cover Johnny Bairstow carrying a man off the pitch. I don't know if you want to get to that, but that's something we need to cover. Then I think we need to cover a little bit of Australian luck and England's bowling plans in general, whether they were good or whether they were bad. Then I think this isn't a chronological order. Then we need to talk about how good Australia were, because I think this was a demonstration of why they're World Test champions at the moment, and why they deserve to be World Test champions as well. Like, this was an extremely good day's cricket from the Australian batting lineup. And then I think maybe we talk about how England could potentially get back into the game overall. So you've got four options there, and feel free, option 5, any other business. Feel free to get yourself involved. Where would you like to start? Because there's some talking points for us to bat around.
Why don't we start with how good Australia were for a change?
Good idea. Yeah, go on. Tell me about this good Australian team.
Well, they they almost Bazballed England, didn't they? It was like Bazball light. It wasn't full Bazball, but they took elements of it and were very successful with it. I'm going to choose. You probably won't, but I'm going to choose to go down the narrative of Ollie Robinson's article about how Australia were negative and refused to go toe to toe with us. Had the opposite of the effect that he was hoping, which was that it would completely disintegrate their brains, and instead it made them go, "Well, we'll show you, Mr. Flogginson," and and basically put the pressure back on England. But joking aside, there were a lot of elements of what England have been trying to do in the way Australia played. I mean, Travis Head's innings was like, vintage what England's middle order tried to do: accelerate the game in that period where it's slightly easier to bat and before the new ball. In a game where we've seen the ball move around a bit, they went at over 4 and over. It's a pretty reasonable strike rate in a non-Bazball cricketing side. Even the wickets they lost were pretty Bazball, weren't they? Travis Head threw away a nailed-on century by dancing down to Joe Root and Cameron Green. Well, don't know what that was, but it wasn't good.
It was bad.
But yeah, I mean, I just think the intensity that Australia played with, obviously they rode their luck a little bit. I mean, when the ball's moving around as a batter, you need a bit of luck. Like you just, every now and then there's going to be a ball that's really good, and all you can do is hope you don't hit it. That happened quite often today, and I made the most of it. Like any sort of width or any sort of over pitching or bad bit of bowling from England was punished. They got right on it. They didn't sort of sit there and try and wait for the shine to come off. They were proactive, and then obviously reserve a word for Steve Smith himself, who just looks like he was never going to be out apart from when he was given out, but he didn't hit the ball. He wasn't even close to hitting the ball.
He was about 2 inches away from hitting the ball.
Yeah.
It was a really weird one, wasn't it? Because it did.
There was a noise, and it sounded like wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sort of looked like it was out, but it very clearly wasn't out. He finishes on 85. It was quite a Steve Smith innings, or it felt like a 2019 Steve Smith innings. He'd been going through a spell, Max. Well, I suppose still is going through a spell. He's maybe not snapped out of it yet, where his early inning strike rate is a lot lower than it used to be early in his career. But today he was on sort of 25 off 25 balls.
He did it backwards.
Playing some booming drives. He looked really, really disturbingly good if you're an England fan. Like he basically looked like that version of Steve Smith where there is nowhere to bowl to him. Like England tried to go straight and he kept whipping them through mid-wicket. They tried to hang it outside off stump and then he was driving them. I
tried a couple of short balls and they went.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like genuinely, when he bats like this, I don't think there is actually a way to get him out. You just sort of have to wait. I don't really know what you're waiting
Wait for him to
for
get
the other
bored.
people to get out, I think like there's kind of an inevitability to him getting this 100 tomorrow, and to being the main event in this match. I mean, like the late wickets, obviously from an England point of view, they mean that the game isn't over, but with Smith still there and 5 wickets to go, Australia could get easily another 150, probably 200. It could be really, really difficult for England.
I'd say the Ashes is currently 1.5-0.
Yeah, I think as day ones go, let's say it started 40-40-20 with the 20 being the draw. I would say it's probably 60-20-20, and that's about as much of a movement as you'll get on day one, unless the team gets bowled out for 50 or something nuts. Like in terms of reasonable things that happen in Test cricket, it was the absolute model for how you want to go about things as a batting side, and it was tough for England, but very, very, very good for the Aussies. Is there anything new that you can say about Steve Smith? He's a little bit like Messi in football, isn't it? Like it was a really good innings. Travis Head was really exceptional as well, and he has been for a while. We were talking about this in our Discord channel, which you can join if you're listening, or you're listening on the watching rather on YouTube. You can join by signing up at patreon.com/cricketpod. We were talking about how many of the Australian top 6 get into a world 11, and like the answer is 4 or 5, depending on whether Travis Head opens the batting or not. Like it's a pretty stacked unit, and I think you just sort of got more evidence of it again today. And this is why I don't want to be too hard. We'll move on to England now. I don't want to be too hard on the English bowlers for what they did today and how they performed. I think sometimes you just run into Steve Smith, Marnus Labuschagne, David Warner with a bit of luck, and Travis Head. And when you run into those players, they score lots of runs. I mean, like, there's a reason these guys are rolling around with averages of 60. Steve Smith, the fastest man to 9,000 runs today. It's because they're exceptional cricketers. Steve Smith may be the second best Test batter in the history of the sport. Like it's unfortunate, and you are willing your team to do better, and you are willing the bowlers to do better because you have seen these bowlers do better against other teams and take wickets against other teams. But sometimes actually, it just doesn't happen for you. Having said that, though, Matt, there was some criticism. There was some pretty heavy criticism of the England team on comms, and Kevin Peterson did a big rant at tea. Is there anything that resonated with you there? Well, where do you land on the it was just a genius performance by Australia to England bowled badly on that spectrum?
Look, I think I don't think England bowled brilliantly. Like there were too many loose deliveries, and that's what Australia capitalised on. But I think that came out of probably a bit of frustration. I mean, in that first, say, hour, maybe hour and a half, England bowled reasonably well. I mean, they got the ball moving, they got it doing stuff, and like we said, I mean, David Warner. I was looking at, ESPN on Cricinfo. They've got this control stat which tells you basically every ball is binary. It's either in control or not in control, depending on basically whether where the ball goes, and comparing that with the intention of the batter at the time. Obviously, there's a little bit of subjectivity to that, but you can pretty much work out whether someone's mistimed it or whether they've played and missed or left it or edged it or whatever. And there was I think it got to David Warner was probably in about the 40s, approaching his 50, and he had a control of 76%, which sounds quite high. But then you flip it around, you're like, a quarter of the balls he faced, he wasn't in control. He didn't do what he wanted to do. He either played and missed or edged it. And that kind of gave you a little bit of an indication, at least with some numbers to back it up, that England were a bit unlucky. And obviously they dropped the catch. Ollie Pope dropped the catch to start with. I mean, Root had that really tough chance. I don't think we can blame him too much for that. But Ollie Pope, obviously, he's got to be snaffling that. And then, maybe David Warner's out, Labuschagne's in early, and the ball's doing a bit more. You get another one, and it's a completely different day. So there is a level of bad luck. And obviously, the drop's not bad luck. That's England's own fault. But it's not the bowler's fault. You're not going to blame the bowlers for the drop catch. So there's an element of that in there. And then obviously, once you get to a point where it's 90 for 1 and you've been bowling pretty well and seeing the ball flash past the edge, you get frustrated, and you're going to try a few different things, and maybe you're going to lose your line, and Australia are putting a bit of pressure on, and then it's easy to knock you off your stride. And I think that's probably where I'd come down on it. I think mostly to start with bad luck, and then Australia really made the most of the start they got. But they say you make your own luck. In this case, it was more of they got a bit of luck and they really made use of it and hammered it home. And you have to give them full credit for the way they played after getting the start. They really built on the platform. So, a bit disappointing for England. But is it worth reviewing England's selection tactics? Obviously, that was the other big thing, wasn't it? We were debating yesterday what we thought they would do. We were half right. We thought we would be four seamers. Didn't think it would be Josh Tongue or Tong. It started off as Tongue against Ireland. Now it's Tong. So I assume they've been told it's Tong.
And then Nasser, at the end of the day, he threw in a tongue.
And
everyone's been tweeting pictures of tongues.
Yeah.
So I think we've maintained the style guide from the last show where I called him Tong and you call him Tongue, and then cover all bases.
Right, yeah. Someone's right.
Are covered, aren't they? I don't know. I thought there's quite a lot to say from a selection point of view. I think your point about Warner is worthy as well, about his control percentage. Over his 88 balls, he wasn't in control of 25% of them, which would mean 22 balls effectively went not where he thought they would go.
And Krikovic had at lunch, they had the expected wicket stat as well, didn't they, which was 3.9.
I didn't see this. So England actually did bowl in quite good areas, and then one of the batters is pretty lucky. There's normally a wicket about every 12 uncontrolled shots. So David Warner could have been out twice. In fact, he was dropped, so maybe that's about right. There was the chance that Root dropped, which somehow people managed to blame on Bairstow.
Even I'm not blaming Bessel on that one.
I think, to be honest, that's a very, very. I think that is dropped probably 50% of the time. So maybe even more. That was a very tough chance, one-handed lower slip. And then there were like a few other instances where England were quite close. Steve Smith was hit LBW, wasn't he? But they appealed. It wasn't given out. They didn't review it. It wouldn't have been overturned, but it kind of was close. The ball went past the outside edge.
You know, maybe if the umpire hadn't given the first LBW that went clearly over the stumps, he might have given the second one, because that looked a better shout.
Yeah, I mean, I think genuinely in this scenario, there is a world where England do get a breakthrough, and they wrap up the Australians for 300 on day one, and they're thinking, well, we've got a few too many, but it's not the end of the world. But you do need a bit of luck, and you need Steve Smith not to be playing like this. And even Marnus, who didn't look great, scored runs. And you definitely don't need Travis Head to come out and get 77 off 77 or 75 and look an absolute $1 million. Yeah, there's a bit of a I don't think England did too much wrong, is what I'm saying. I think they bowled the right areas before lunch. I think they were unlucky. I thought Kevin Peterson banging on about 78 miles an hour and all sorts of nonsense was incorrect on this occasion. And I think almost any occasion when you get these conditions in England, like the bowling.
I mean, England have been rolling around with this attack for the last 5 years.
Yeah, and it works at home, and it works in these conditions at home. So I don't think that was a particularly valid piece of criticism. I think later in the day, they didn't bounce Head earlier. And then when they did, he hit them in the crowd. So I mean, I don't know which way you want to take that. Maybe they should have bounced him earlier. But yeah, I don't know. It drifted a bit later on. I think there is certainly criticism. I think that could be levelled at England versus recent England.
Yeah.
Where you could say once it became clear that conventional wickets were going to become, or had become, quite difficult to take, when Smith and Marnus were taking the game away from England after lunch, maybe then you look at doing something different. But I don't know. Sometimes my take on this is Australia played really, really well.
Yeah.
And that you give credit to Australia for playing really, really well. And England played kind of okay, but they're not quite as good as Australia. And so if you only play kind of okay instead of excellently, if the skill gap is already big and you've just made it a little bit bigger, that's my kind of thought on that. Should we take a break and then we'll do the England selection and then Johnny Bairstow being carried off the pitch, and there was something else, how England get back in the game.
Yep.
So a reminder before we head off that you can find us on Facebook now. If you go to the show notes, facebook.com, I think it's .com, could be .co.uk. I'm pretty sure Facebook's American.
.com.
Facebook.com/The Cricket Pod. And you can we've got up to 7 people who like.
Oh, nice.
Pod. Yeah, which is good. That's 2. So it's 1 a day so far in the existence of the page. No, it's not quite 1 a day, but me and you and maybe Ross have liked it. So 4 real people.
1 a day, one a day organically.
Yeah. So do head over there and do that. And also we're at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back in a moment.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Well, Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast. We were about to talk about England's selection for the second test of the Ashes. We're at Lords. We speculated on Monday, Max, that they would go, or that they would think about four-seamers, and we thought Chris Woakes would be the man they turned to if that was the case. We also thought that Mark Wood might come into the side if he was fit. As it turns out, Mark Wood has an elbow injury, and so was ruled out of this test. And they decided not to go with Woakes, who I think they deemed would have been too similar to the other guys that they went with. They instead went with Josh Tongue, or Tongue. Josh Tongue to me. Who has picked up a couple of wickets and probably justified his selection. But there are other repercussions. There's no spinner now. It looks like it's spinning. The other seamers, all do look samey. Is there another route that England could have gone down? What's happened here, Max? What's happened? Talk to me.
I've just made a decision in the break. You can call him Josh Tongue. I'm going to call him Josh Tongue. We can go for the double vowel joke. So England, Wood being out's a problem with any point of difference. I can kind of from that point of view understand why they've gone with Tongue, but there's obviously the question of is that someone that they're trying to get in to bowl pace, be that point of difference? He's quicker than the others, like considerably quicker than the others, but he, 88, 89 top end isn't quick enough really to be troublesome as a fast bowler on your own. Now he actually, he was the most expensive bowler actually, bowled any number of overs today, but he actually did look like he caused some problems. It did almost look a little bit like bowling 86 miles an hour when the ball nips around a bit instead of 81 miles an hour or 79 miles an hour was slightly more challenging to face at times, but that's not him coming in as a fast bowler, is it? That's him coming in as I guess a similar kind of bowler to the others. The two wickets he got, they sort of swung in a bit down the slope and carried on going. But the question really is what other options England have with Ben Stokes bowling 3 overs. And you look at the others, 15 for Anderson, 18 for Broad and Josh Tongue, and then 21 for Ollie Robinson. Obviously, normally Ben Stokes would be bowling more than that. Like, even if it's not that many more, maybe like 8. Just take a bit of some of the workload off. So I think it was mentioned on comms. He wasn't up the pace either. He was, around 80 miles an hour, 79 miles an hour, and he can push 85 reasonably comfortably when he wants to.
I'm sure Stokes has got 90 in him, or has had. I don't think anymore.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But like average. Yeah. So there's obviously something wrong there. So maybe that's what's factored into going with 4 seamers as well, just to rotate things a bit more. So, and then you're basically in a point where you're a bit stuck, aren't you? Chris Woakes is another option. I do think that having Anderson, Broad, Robinson, and Woakes, it's just I don't think it can work, especially if you get
it too many.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like especially if it goes like it did today, didn't it? Like that plan didn't work, and then there's no plan B. And I think like going back to the point just before the break, I think that's possibly where you might level some criticism at England when plan A didn't work, which was win the toss and hope the ball does the work. There didn't seem to be a plan to control the runs, or like you say, get a wicket a different way. So there's that to consider. But I guess the point is I don't really see what else England could have done apart from swap out Anderson, Broad, or Robinson for Chris Woakes. That's just hoping another guy does a better job. Like that's not tactically a different ploy, is it? So yeah, I think they were a bit hamstrung, I suppose, by the fact that all of England's fastest bowlers have injuries.
Yeah, it did make them a bit. The one bit of criticism that was fair, I think, was that after they didn't have the luck before lunch to make the breakthroughs to put Australia under pressure, that's when having 4 similar bowlers does become a bit of an issue, because you can't do anything to wrestle back the initiative, if you like. You're basically playing on the batter's terms at that point. Um, I don't know. I mean, like, it is difficult to offer other analysis. Like, I would have probably picked Chris Wokes because I think, but that would mainly be because I think he can bat.
Yeah.
And I think that the bat plus.
Well,
ball
what are the
aspect of
stats? He
Chris
averages
Wokes-
11 with the ball and 60 with the bat at Lords or something obscene.
I mean,
Right.
I think there's a little bit of a sample size thing there, but he actually is a guy who averaged. He's a very good number 8.
Yeah.
He's
He's played a decent number of tests at Lords, but obviously, not enough that a couple of big games won't change it.
I mean, look, it's a ground where, of the English grounds, it's probably his best ground, and he is a good bowler. It's probably the ground that suits him the most, and he is a good bowler in England. He's had
Yeah.
injuries and stuff as well, though. Like,
Yeah.
picking him is not necessarily a ticket to success. He's had his problems. Who else can they go to? Well, kind of nobody. If Wood is injured, Mahmood's out, Ollie Stone is out, Archer may never be fit again. And then that leaves maybe going with the spinner instead. And they decide they can't pick Moeen Ali. And I think there's pretty good recent evidence for why that wouldn't have been a wise selection. Probably his finger hasn't healed at this point as well. Probably they looked at the pitch and thought it's not going to spin much here, so we might not need one. And so Moeen's out, and then Ray.
And also we've got Joe Root.
Well, also we've got Joe Root, and then Rayan Ahmed's the other option, who has kind of been playing as a batter for his county this year. Like he's not a guy who's bowled serious overs himself. I think it would be asking a lot for them to step up.
Yeah.
So, people were tweeting us today to say that England tactically got it wrong or their selection wrong. I would have gone with Wokes for somebody because of the batting, but I don't think that they had many other options, out there. Once Wood is off the table, which is obviously an obvious pick, and Moeen's off the table, which again it seems like he would have been. You're taking a huge risk whether you go with Tong or whether you go with Rayan Ahmed. They probably make that call right. And then, they don't take the wickets, and it all looks like a bad. With hindsight, we're all saying, "Oh, I wish they'd done something different." But I don't. Again, I've made this point a bunch of times, but sometimes it is just worth repeating this. They ran into a really good batting lineup today, who handled the conditions well and cashed in the afternoon and the evening when things got a little bit easier. There was perfect Test cricket from Australia.
Yeah.
It's difficult for them. We do have one person, maybe one of our first messages ever from Facebook. Rohit says, "What about Liam Dawson?" Well, Liam Dawson would have been a potential, but he wasn't in the squad. He actually this week took 11 wickets, I think, in a county championship match and got a bunch of runs.
Yeah.
So maybe
It's with the
Liam Dawson-
Kookaburra though, so it doesn't count.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. They're doing a round
Yeah.
with the Kookaburra.
Just like Surrey getting bowled out for 83 today didn't count because it was the Kookaburra.
I think there's I would have gone with Liam Dawson over Rayan Ahmed as the person you call up. But then I still think Liam Dawson is Josh Tong is a very marginal selection at Lords.
Yeah.
Maybe Liam Dawson does something closer to what Jack Leach can do in terms of being able to bowl overs that control the run rate.
Yeah, that's the other reason you
That's
probably wouldn't
that's
go
the
with Rayan
difference.
Ahmed, is it? He's a leg spinner as an attacking, I suppose, thing, and the role England really, I suppose, would want would probably be to try and hold up an end, take overs out of the pacer's legs and that side of things, and obviously that's not really what you get from him. He's inexperienced. That could easily backfire horribly. So, yeah.
Right, Max. Next thing we need to talk about is Johnny Bairstow carrying a grown man 70 metres under his arm,
Yep.
like a dad playing aeroplanes with a small child.
It genuinely looked like a cardboard cutout, the way he was
impressed
carrying
were
it.
you? How impressed were you by this feat of strength from YJB?
Well, I mean, it was a clear evidence of what he's in the side to do, isn't it? He's the he's the mopper-upper of the Just Stop Oil protesters, and they obviously had some intel, England, that this was going to be a problem in one of the first few tests of the series, and they wanted their man on the ground to be able to deal with it. So I saw the pan out when I was watching. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I assume that someone's run onto the pitch because that's normally what happens when you don't want to give airtime to it. And then, yeah, they just showed the replay of Johnny Bairstow just marching nonchalantly off the pitch with this, like, literally wearing him like a handbag. It was fantastic. Like, really, really enjoyed it. I would say, fine. Like protest at the snooker. I like snooker, but I don't mind you protesting at the snooker. That's not a problem. Go and lie on the floor at the Grand National. Don't mind that. Horses do die, but hands off the Ashes. Pick your battles. Come on. You want people to support you.
Are you not woke, Max? I always thought of you as someone who was kind of woke. And
Oh no, not part of that tofu eating
my-
wokerati.
my-
No, I mean
my
I support the concept of the protests and the reasoning behind it. But the idea, you need to get people on side, don't you, with protesting? That's where sometimes they go a bit wrong. It's all about it's all about the public image, and the Ashes,
Okay.
hands off.
Well, so you think the public image of climate change is now Johnny Bairstow?
It's the MCC. They're very concerned about climate change, Jack. Haven't you heard?
I don't know. I don't really care about these people doing these things. I find them entertaining. I think they've got a point.
Yeah.
I did think it was quite funny the way Bairstow dealt with it, and I like the jokes. If folks had been playing, he'd have caught both of them.
Yep.
Which made me laugh. Max, we've got about 5-10 minutes left. How can England get back in this test? And don't just say take loads of wickets in the morning. Like I want a vision here. I want stats. I want data. I want a coherent thesis.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, there's a couple of things in England's. I'll say in England's favour, but the couple of things that work in a way that would allow England to win this game. One of them is the approach that they're taking now. They speed up the game. Australia have scored quite quickly as well. So I mean, there's time in the game. It could have been, a few years ago, you'd be looking at this and be like, well, there are two options: either Australia win or there's a draw. But the game's moved on pretty quickly. 339 runs in the one day. There's a bit of rain around tomorrow by the looks of it, but I think that'll be quite early, so hopefully it won't take too much time out of it and we can catch it up towards the end. And then obviously England, when they go about their innings, they're going to try and score runs quickly, and if it comes off, then they'll go and there's an opportunity for them to overtake or match Australia's score and leave plenty of time left in the game to win it. And then the other thing is obviously that Lords, we've seen it a number of times before. The first day is the trick. Well, the first hour, first session is the trickiest to bat. And then once as the game goes on, and particularly into day 2 and day 3, it gets probably the best time to bat. Maybe it'll quicken up a bit, and it'll be a bit easier for England to score runs. So if they can keep Australia down to a manageable score at least, like 450. You don't want to be going above 450, and catch up. They're in with a shout, but they're obviously behind the game. It's going to take a monumental batting effort. Is there any news on Ollie Pope yet?
Nothing so far. He didn't go to hospital. He was being treated with ice.
Okay.
I don't really know anything about shoulders. I'll be honest. So I don't know whether that's a good sign or a bad sign. Whether the introduction of ice is, likely
Yeah,
to
I mean,
help.
it seems like if you're being treated with ice rather than A&E, then you're probably all right.
Yeah,
Although
but
that
I
said,
don't
the
know.
other day 999 literally wasn't working in England, so maybe
is that
they
what they
couldn't
do?
get a doctor.
If you get injured at the cricket, if you're playing, they ring 999. So if you've got an ambulance, we've got Joe Root here. He split the webbing.
Could you come down and sew it back up for us?
Yeah, we'll leave this guy with a heart attack. We're on our way. I thought for a little bit, and I think this is slightly wishful thinking from an England point of view, for multiple counts, including the fact that they actually ended up losing this game that I'm about to talk about. But 2 years ago at Lords, England played India, and on day 1, India piled on a whole load of runs.
Yeah.
I think they finished the day 2 down for 280 odd, something like that. Lost all 8 wickets before lunch the next day with Anderson sort of running through them. So what you're saying, like it is something that can and does happen. Then in that match, England fought back. Joe Root got a ton, and they really should have won the match going into the fifth day. That was the one where the first time
Brummer turned into the world's best all-rounder.
Yeah. And then England couldn't bat out 55 overs for a draw, so they ended up. They lost, but
yeah, I mean it was an unbelievable spell of bowling. We should probably say.
Oh
that.
yeah, it was a really good Test match all round. But there is hope for England, I think, as long as they take those early wickets. I think anything under 400 with this England team, you just don't really know. Like you 400 is 80 overs for England as they are at the moment. So. You know, it is possible that they will bat themselves into a position to win this match, but I do think they really need a superb. Like they need to be as lucky tomorrow morning as they were unlucky this morning if they're going to get back into it, and they need to hope that Steve Smith stays up all night shadow batting and is too exhausted, or eats too many M&Ms.
Gets lost on the way to the newsagents to buy David Warner's lottery ticket.
Did you see that tweet? That was one of my favourite tweets.
I did. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
A road map, a Google map from Lords to the nearest off licence or nearest newsagent, so that Dave Warner could buy his lottery ticket. Max, is there anything else that we need to say? I'm not sure. I had a look on YouTube. I didn't think we had any questions. We have maybe one or two on Twitter, so I'll go over there now. But if you do have a question on YouTube or Facebook, drop it in. Drop it in. When the wicket of Head fell, did we see Bazball flashes? Says Prashanth on Twitter. Is that from an England point of view or from an Australia point of view? Because I think Travis Head basically is a guy who does what Bazball is. Like he is an exploiter of conditions, and he will go for you if he sees the chance. Like he would fit very well into the England ethos, and he kind of works in Australia's game plan as well. I mean, Australia have got many more traditional batters, but they set him up quite nicely. From an England point of view, though, I didn't think it was like a master plan. I think Travis Head made a bit of a mistake, to be honest. Maybe
he got a bit overexcited. He thought he was batting against a part-time off spinner.
Off spin. It was, to be fair, it ripped.
It did turn.
It did turn. it was a good
it turned a concerning amount, given there's a guy called Gary on the other side. But
it was a good stumping too.
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, he did. He kept pretty well today, Besto. I think if anything, it was all Australia Bazball in the sense that they'd got to a point where they were in danger of killing the game off, and they thought, well, let's throw a couple of wickets away and entertain the crowd, because that's what Test cricket's all about.
Cool. And then further on Twitter, Joseph asked, having them mess things up with their 11 selection. I think we covered that. I didn't really think so. And Chak asks two questions, and they're both quite good. Can Bairstow open with Duckett so that Folkes can keep wicket and Crawley can be dropped? Now, I think the answer to that is that in theory that could happen, but England will never do that.
England will never do it, but I don't have a problem with the idea.
Yeah. And two, the World Cup fixtures have been announced, but Mohali has not been selected. A lot of Punjabi fans are not happy with this as it's an iconic venue. Any thoughts on this? Well, if you want to look at those fixtures, one, ridiculous that they're released 100 days before the tournament, before your World Cup. It's absolutely stupid that we're in this scenario because of a dispute about where the Asia Cup is, which should really have nothing to do with the World Cup, but that's that. The other factor is there's obviously been a little bit of gerrymandering in terms of the venues that have been selected. There's a lot of matches at Dharamshala, which is a surprise. Ahmedabad has the opening game of the tournament, India v Pakistan, and the final, which again,
surely not.
Would be a surprise unless you knew that the name of the stadium was the Narendra Modi Stadium. I'm not going to go deep on the politics, but there's definitely been a bit of meddling there, hasn't there? And I think it is a shame that there's going to be no cricket in Mahali at the World Cup. There's a lot of games they could have shared them around a bit better. I think there's a little bit of there's some glory picks in there, is what I'd say. Max, I don't think we've got anything on YouTube. Don't think we've got anything on Facebook, so we can wrap up. Do you want to say goodbye? Should we wave goodbye? Okay, don't say goodbye then. Just wave.
Yeah, goodbye. Well, we'll see you tomorrow for England's dramatic turnaround.
At the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Like and subscribe to the Cricket Podcast wherever you listen or watch. Join the gang on Facebook and get the numbers for that page going. It's all in the show notes. You can buy coffee, you can get merch, you can go to Serious Cricket. There's a whole load of stuff down there.
I need to buy some coffee, actually. Good reminder.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow.